Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Sugar Mama's Fireplay podcast. I am Canna Campbell. This morning's podcast, we're talking about the one and only Britney Spears and what we can learn from what she has gone through over the last couple of years. Now, before we begin, I just want to do a quick warning. I get a little bit passionate about this topic of personal insurance in this podcast. And whilst I share a few different things about this topic, I want to let you know that this is not product advice or strategic advice. When I talk about the topic of personal insurance, I recommend that everyone stops and has a look at their individual situation. What is important to them to protect? Any personal insurances that they may have, how much it costs them, and how much the cover is included in those policies. And if you have any questions or want to know what you should be doing, whether it be decreasing or increasing or taking out new policies, please go and talk to a financial planner and get personal product advice relating to insurances. All right, let's begin. Today's podcast is advice from the one and only Britney Spears. That's right. We're going to talk about 5 very valuable lessons that we have gained, can see through what she's experienced over the last 10, 15, even 20 years. And today we have a very special guest joining with us, Chris Herrald, who is a partner at Mullins Lawyers. Now, before we begin, of course, as always, all of my content, whether it be a podcast, a blog post, something on Instagram, or a YouTube video, it is always general advice only. It's never product advice, investment advice, or strategic advice. If there's anything that ever catches your ear or eye, you think, I wonder if I should be doing this, that's when you should reach out and speak to a qualified financial planner. And on that note, as we touch on these topics around law, in particular estate law, please make sure, again, you do not interpret this as personal advice, but you always get and seek legal advice from a professional. Good morning, Chris. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. I'm also not Britney Spears, so...
Sorry if anyone I'm misleading anyone with Britney's podcast.
Good morning. I'm really happy to be here to chat with you.
Well, look, let's get cracking on this straight away because it's been such an interesting thing to be watching everyone's perspective around the world in the Free Britney. One of the most popular pop stars in the world have heard Dirty Laundry aired, and a lot of people didn't realize, including myself, but for the last 15 years, she has had all of her financial decisions controlled by a group of other people.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So what happened to Britney? There's this bit of law in California called the California Probate Code. And so what happened was the court determined that she was unable to provide properly for herself, that she was unable to manage her financial resources, that she'd be unable to resist fraud. So, resist somebody trying to con her out of her money, etc., that should be really subject to persuasion or undue influence by somebody. So they appointed her father, which has been well publicised, as her conservator. So now we don't use that term here in Australia, conservator, but we do have laws throughout all of the states and territories in Australia that enable a tribunal to appoint somebody to manage financial affairs for you if it's deemed that you can't manage them.
So she was essentially controlled on what she could do?
Yeah, that's right. So she was controlled lots of different types of decisions that were made for her. So that ranged from medical decisions, various medical treatments, and it also controlled, what she could or could not do with her money effectively. I mean, I don't know anything about the specific case. A lot of those records are sealed. So what I know about the case is just what is being available in the media. But we have pretty similar...
So if somebody deems
you can't make decisions for yourself for health matters, then somebody can be appointed to make health decisions for you. So be, deciding what doctors, what medical treatment they get. You can have somebody appointed to make personal decisions for you. So they're lifestyle type decisions, where you live, what you eat, what you wear. And then, of course, we've got people can be appointed to administer your financial affairs. That is, accessing your money, controlling it, controlling what you invest in, control what it's spent on. It's really all encompassing. And if you don't take steps to put plans in place yourself, then all a tribunal can do is make the best decision that they can. And I don't know if you've seen any of the media reports lately. Our public trustee here in Queensland, and as well as other state trustees as well, was subjected recently to an investigation by Four Corners. And what that revealed was some shocking mismanagement of other people's funds and lives. And, if any one of those people had an enduring power of attorney in place where they had made a decision about who would be in control of their lives if they did lose capacity, then a lot of that could have been avoided for them.
Well, this is exactly what I want to focus on. And it's the first one that starts us off with the 5 valuable lessons we can take away from Britney Spears. And that is obviously the power of attorney. Now, a lot of people think, well, hang on, I don't have any money. Nothing's going to happen to me. I'm young, I'm fit, I'm healthy. But in fact, that's a very surface level and short-sighted view, because it doesn't matter about whether you've got money or not. It's the lifestyle in which you want to live, where you want to live, how you want to live. And it also, you might be fit and healthy, but things can happen in the blink of an eye, including, some sort of traumatic accident. This is
That's
why
right.
we need a power of attorney. So would you mind just explain to everyone, Chris, what a power of attorney is and why it is so incredibly important, even for young people who are fit and healthy, who may or may not have financial assets?
Yeah, so a power of attorney, now, first of all, I just wanted to say the language that I'm using is language that I used in my practice here in Queensland. So I want everybody to know that there's similar language used throughout the other states. So here in Queensland, we use the term power of attorney to describe everything: personal matters, health matters, and financial matters. But in New South Wales, they use the term an enduring power of guardianship to talk about personal and health matters, and an enduring power of attorney to when you're just talking about financials. So what I'm talking about when we're talking about an enduring power of attorney is, so that is a document that people can use so that they get to choose who is going to be in control of their financial affairs if they lose capacity to do so themselves. This applies whether or not you do or don't have money. A lot of people think, oh, well, I don't really have anything. But if you have ever been employed anywhere in Australia, ever, you have probably a superannuation balance. And if you have a superannuation balance, then your superannuation fund is going to require a death benefit nominee. So an enduring power of attorney is not just to appoint somebody to manage money that you already have. It's to appoint somebody to make very important financial decisions for you, including things like who is to receive your superannuation death benefit. So an attorney, for example, could make a change to that. So if you had nominated a particular person to receive your superannuation, an attorney, if you lost capacity, an attorney could change that. And so all of a sudden, it becomes very important that the person you've chosen is somebody that you trust. So it's really very important to have an enduring power of attorney in place. The other thing is that particularly when people are starting out in relationships, and it's more and more common these days for people to keep their finances separate in a relationship rather than combine them. So if you're living in a household with somebody and you are contributing to financial expenses, either you're sharing expenses to, I don't know, raise children or other household expenses. If something happens to you, you're in an accident, you lose capacity as a result of some sort of trauma, then no one is going to be able to access your bank accounts without either a valid enduring power of attorney that's in place that you have done, or an order from the civil and administrative tribunal that's in your state. Now, I don't know about the timeframes in other states, but in Queensland, the current timeframe between an application being made to the tribunal and when an order is actually made is currently 14 weeks. So think about 14 weeks where no one can access your money, where no one can pay your bills, where no one can support your dependents, where perhaps what happens if you are in the middle of buying a house? That's no one to sign the transfer documents, or selling a house. Having an enduring power of attorney is not just if you have assets. It's for all ages. It is a part of essential essential life plan.
Yeah. If you don't have it and something goes wrong, essentially your finances are in lockdown.
They are locked away. Nobody can access it. And a lot of people don't realize, particularly if they have a spouse, a lot of people think, oh, well, my spouse should be able to access my money. Not true. That's only the case if you have a joint account with them. If you've got money that's in an account and your spouse needs to access it to continue to, support your children or pay your bills, then that money is not going to be accessible to them.
This brings me to my next point, is where Britney went wrong. And I'm sure she didn't mean to at the time.
Yeah, well, she was really young.
And that is, proactively nominating someone that you can trust to be your power of attorney. And obviously not only trust them at the time you set it up, trust them ongoing. And at the moment you don't trust them ongoing, you quickly change that power of attorney. Can we just quickly chat about that very briefly?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we saw with Britney, the person that the court chose for her was her father. And there were very well publicised problems with that.
Because he had been bankrupt before, I believe.
I don't know too much about that, but we do know that he was charging fees, eye-watering fees.
I believe the conservatorship also asked for a pay rise.
Yes. Also the fact that her father was in control of her money and was making decisions about it that she just didn't want. And so appointing somebody that you trust is really, really important. So what I quite often say to my clients, and this is what I say, irrespective of their age, whether they are, they've just turned 18 and they're now an adult and they need to start life planning, or whether they're in the later half of their life, they're at the retirement phase, is that when you're giving somebody a power of attorney, you are giving them effectively the most control that anybody will ever have in your life. So you need to make sure that you trust that person implicitly. Sometimes people ask me, well, who's the best person to appoint?
Yeah,
so
how do you know?
How do you know? And that really depends on the stage of life that you're at. For example, if you're in your early 20s, you might still be living at home with your parents. You might only just be in a new relationship. So quite often in those circumstances, people might appoint one or both of their parents, or possibly one or both of their siblings. They can appoint their new partner. You can appoint anybody that you want as long as they themselves are over the age of 18. But a lot of value can be had in actually one of the things that seeing a lawyer, an estate, someone who does estate planning day in, day out, is that you can get the benefit of their experience about what works and what doesn't work. Because if you're in a brand new relationship, you might not quite know what their financial position is, or you might not know whether or not they have the same financial values that you have. So that can be difficult to make. Other decisions that people can make when they're older, they think, and they've got adult children, they think, oh, I'll appoint my kids. That in itself can be problematic if the kids all live about the country or some overseas, or appointing somebody that you trust is incredibly important, because they can basically control every aspect of your finances. But it's also really important to appoint somebody that's going to work practically for you as well, because there's no point appointing somebody that lives in a different time zone to you if they're not going to be able to do the things that you need them to do, like sign paperwork that needs to be time critical, or time critical banking, for instance. So they're the types of things that is really important. Because the other thing to say about why trust is so important is that if your attorney does the wrong thing, then really the only way to have that fixed is by suing them, or by somebody else suing them on your behalf. And that is long, it's expensive, and it can get messy, and you might not ever get back that money.
Yeah. Well, this then brings us to the third point, and that is emergency money. Britney's taken some very much needed time out for herself, and she's needed to have cash set aside to live off, so that she can afford to take that time off, but also she can afford to fight.
Yeah.
And wear those legal costs and take that risk on her shoulders to challenge the restrictions and laws that were put upon her. Yeah. So I think that's something we can all really learn about, is having emergency money. You can think, well, I'm, someone like Britney, rich, successful.
She probably has more emergency money than I do.
I think me too. I think you and I put together times 100,000. Yeah. There's more still. But she would have needed, money to be able to fight this. And if this, I couldn't even imagine how much she spent on legal fees.
Yeah.
And I'm sure some of those she may not ever get back, even though she's obviously won. But having emergency money, but having the right type of emergency money. And, people always ask me, how much money should I have from an emergency perspective? And I always say, there's no magical formula. There's no 3-month rule. Imagine 3-month rule for Britney would be nothing. You need to think about what's realistic for you in your situation. What are your financial responsibilities? What are risks which could actually happen? What are foreseeable risks, and how much would they cost you? How do you like to live your life? What's your security like? Are you renting? Do you have a mortgage? Do you have a fixed salary? Do you have much annual leave accumulated? Do you not have much sick leave? Do you have any insurances in place? And I'll come to insurances in a second, but work out the right amount of emergency money for you. And one thing I will also add in, don't just bank on one emergency. Bank on 3 emergencies happening all at the same time, because we've heard about things happening in 3. So what would the financial cost be to you as an individual or as a family if 3 things happen at the same time? And I've had, even myself personally, I've had 3 bits of bad luck in a row, and it added up to be quite expensive. So that's why you can't just think, 20,000 would be enough to get me out of trouble. Sit down and do the numbers. It doesn't actually take that long. Grab a calculator and add it up and round everything up. And that's how much emergency money you should have. But particularly someone like Britney, she's a classic example, someone who would have had to have emergency money. And it sounds like she did, because she had the financial and emotional strength to get her into a position where she could take her father head on, which is emotionally draining as it is, with that financial backing. The 4th thing, and Chris, I'd love you to point out any key points here from a legal perspective, and that is personal insurance.
Yeah.
Life insurance, income protection, trauma cover, TPD cover. You have got to be able to make sure that you have protected your future financial well-being. I was listening to an old podcast of mine the other day. It was with Leela Lute. She talks about, together her and I talk about a body. And if you're earning $100,000 a year and you're 20 and you intend to work for the next 40 years of your life, retiring at age 60, and we don't take into consideration any inflation or pay rises or career progression whatsoever, there's at least $4 million worth of income you're going to be earning over the next 40 years. You want to try to a certain degree, or the best of your ability, to try and lock that income in. So it is essential that you have the right insurance policies in place. And I'm talking not general insurance, like your car insurance and home and contents and travel insurance. They're very important, but personal insurance, as I said, life cover, TPD cover, trauma cover, and the number one most important cover, income protection. Because income protection, and this is where that power of attorney is so important, having someone you can trust, emergency money, having a policy that says, all right, you're not very well right now. You need to focus on recovery, rehabilitation, taking time out, maybe fighting the legal system and fighting your own battles. But for example, an income protection that's got a comprehensive level of cover may even include mental health, for example. And if this is obviously under medical terms, not just you not wanting to go to work, but there may be some form of protection in there, which pays you up to 75% of your income if you cannot work due to a medical reason, assuming obviously you're covered under the policy details, so that you can continue on functioning. And look, we've never heard anything about Britney Spears having insurance. And, being a singer, I imagine it's quite hard to get that type of insurance in the first place. But for most of us, everyday people, you can take income protection out. The interesting one, which is I'd love your opinion here, is, a lot of people, including myself, my life cover, and no, this is not personal product advice, is my life cover is through my superannuation policy. How does that affect the estate planning power of attorney? Does that fall under the same umbrella, or is it separate?
Well, again, and this is also, I'm just going to, emphasize that this is just education, information for education. You definitely need to get your estate planning advice that is specific to your own needs from a lawyer, if it's legal advice, and from a qualified financial advisor such as yourself, if you actually, want advice about insurances or anything like that. But so what I can say though is that having insurances is I do think it's very important part of an estate plan overall. And I'll also just say about an estate plan, a lot of people hear the word estate plan and think, oh, well, I don't have any assets there's nothing to make any plans about.
I think people like to joke about that.
yeah. They're like, there's no plan, no plan. The way I use the phrase estate planning is not just planning, what happens to the stuff you've already got. It's planning the control and the people that are appointed in your life, or as your executor, if you pass away, to manage these things for you and to manage the paperwork. So let's just take a recent example. So, I've had clients who have, due to recent medical diagnosis, they, need assistance with a TPD claim. So now the particular diagnosis means that I am dealing with that person's attorney that they have appointed under an enduring power of attorney rather than that particular person themselves. So had there not been an enduring power of attorney already in place, then it would be really difficult for me as a lawyer to assist dealing with the TPD claim. Likewise, any types of claims or dealing with money after somebody has lost capacity to make decisions for themselves, unless there's already that enduring power of attorney document in place, it can be really difficult for other professional advisors, so such as financial advisors, accountants, lawyers, even dealing with, the bank teller is going to be really difficult if you don't have an enduring power of attorney in place. And quite often all of those advisors or financial institutions would say, sorry, if there's no power of attorney in place, you need to go off to the tribunal before we'll deal with this. And that can also be really tricky, because if you're relying on this insurance payout, then and then to be told that nope, sorry, you have to go off to a tribunal that has a 14-week wait anyway, then that's really difficult. So I cannot overemphasize the fact that having an enduring power of attorney in place is a very important part of life admin.
Yeah.
You talked about an emergency fund before, so having money aside, and people, in my experience, people don't like paying legal fees for anything really ever. It's because people when they see when they see a lawyer, it's because they've got a problem, right? So it's not like they're going and spending money on something that they actually want. They're spending money because they've got a legal problem. They've got a problem they need to resolve. So sometimes it's a bit like a grudge purchase is how I describe it. But it is. But when you mentioned your personal insurances before, house, car. To me, the cost of getting proper legal advice to have your documents put in place, it's about the cost of an annual insurance premium anyway. You're probably not going to have to pay it every year. Most estate plans, I would, review. I usually tell clients, review your estate plan every time something like big life events happen. So births, marriages, deaths, divorces, big life events. And if none of those things happen to you in, say, a 3 to 5 year period, then get out your documents, have a look, maybe call the lawyer that did them for you, said, hey, nothing's really changed, just sort of to touch base to get them updated. Because having these documents in place, it is like having an insurance policy. It's an arrangement that you have set up to assist you, if something horrible does happen to you and you lose capacity to make decisions for yourself. So that's so I know I've strayed a little bit away from your specific question about life insurance, which I will get to, but I just think it's an important observation to make that if you are getting insurances in place, please consider the cost of getting these documents in place, an essential insurance premium.
I think it's you're paying for peace of mind as well. I know when I took out all my insurances many, many moons ago that I took it all out. I took the levels of cover and I review those levels of cover, but I go to sleep at night knowing that if something happens to me, my family are not going to lose the house.
Yeah.
But Tom's not going to have to work 3 jobs. In fact, he'll probably be better off. The comfort it gives me, and the problem is a lot of people don't realize it's too late to discover this when something goes wrong.
Yeah.
Well, you get a bad diagnosis.
Yeah.
You dial 000. Too late that you've missed that opportunity. Do the work up front, get it set up, and know that you've done the right responsible thing, and you will feel such a greater level of confidence, security, and peace of mind further down the track. And as you said, it takes a couple of minutes just to review it and check it and just make sure that's exactly what you want, what your wishes are. And if it's not a hard thing to change. Going on to the fifth and final one. And sorry, no.
Do you want me to talk about the life insurance?
Yeah, just wrap that up. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I'll be really quick. So whether you have life insurance inside or outside your superannuation is possibly going to affect a couple of things in your estate plan. So you're having your enduring power of attorney. If your life insurance is in your superannuation, then what your attorney is deciding, they're deciding where the death benefit is being paid. So, if you have life insurance within your superannuation, then it's when you die, it is going to be paid out as part of the death benefit, which makes the death benefit nomination very, very important and a very important job for your attorney to do. So I don't know if one of my most recent case updates that they've just sort of done a really quick update in Instagram. It actually is a recent decision. So it was about a gentleman who passed away with an $880,000 death benefit. Most of that was life insurance. And because he didn't have a binding nomination in place, it was up to the trustee, but the family fought about it. So this was like a 5-year, and I don't know what the legal fees were, but there were lots of lawyers involved. So I'm assuming it was very expensive. And all of that could have been saved by the proper completion of a 2-page binding death benefit nomination form. So having a power of attorney, having an attorney in place that can renew your or make your death benefit nominations that are binding on the trustee, if it's right for your circumstances, is really important, because that's how your life insurance will be dealt with. If your life insurance is outside of your superannuation, then it will be paid to the people that you have nominated to receive that benefit upon your death. I mean, there are lots of other differences, depending on whether after you've died, money is paid to your estate or directly to a dependent, can change the amount of tax that ends up getting paid on that life insurance premium that gets paid out. There's differences in whether the premium's paid are deductible or not, depending on whether it's in your super or not. But that's, again, this is all just general advice. So I definitely think having insurance, though, is a really good way to provide for your family in the event of your death.
And with that binding death nomination through super, for people who think, I've got my life coverage through super and my TPD, and they think, oh, hang on, I'm not sure about this binding death nomination thing. Yeah. For the record, how often does that need to be renewed?
It's most superannuation funds will require it to be renewed every 3 years. And there is a very specific way that it needs to be renewed. It needs to be signed. There needs to be 2 witnesses. So if you have not signed a death benefit nomination form with 2 witnesses in the last 3 years, then you probably do not have a binding death benefit nomination in place.
Go and check your superannuation policy, check any insurances that you may have within your superannuation policy, and check who your nominated beneficiary is and see if it's binding.
Yeah, and I'll also say as well that the other problem with death benefit nominations is often the validity, because if you fill out a form and send it off to your superannuation fund, that fund is not going to come back to you to tell you if it is a valid nomination or not. That will be a happy surprise that's discovered once you've died. So it's really important, I think, as part of your estate plan, like to talk to your lawyer or advisor about who should be on that form, because superannuation can only be paid to a very specific group of people. So if you have nominated your sister from the time that you first got your first job at McDonald's or wherever your first job was, that is probably not a valid nomination. So you should definitely check that.
And the fifth and final valuable financial advice from Britney Spears has got to be investing. Investing in diversified, growing passive income streams completely separate to your salary or your job. A lot of people think Britney Spears, she's a singer, she sells albums, but she has a wide brand. She has her own brand, she has her own product selection. She has a variety of different businesses and different investments going for her. So whilst, yes, she is a singer, a pop singer, she actually can lean on other income sources. And this is what I really want to stress for everyone who listens to my podcasts and watches my videos on YouTube and reads my blog posts and follows me on Instagram. You do not want to be 100% always reliant on your income to get by. Start investing, start planting those seeds today. for your long-term financial future and well-being. It's important that these passive income streams be diversified, but they also be growing passive income streams. That is to say that they can keep up with inflation or, ideally even better, exceed inflation. So that, say, for example, you earn, say, $50,000 a year from a diversified property portfolio or a share portfolio or whatever your heart desires. That $50,000 keeps continuing to grow year after year after year. So it continues on providing you with that comfort, that financial independence, that financial security. And it may not necessarily cover all of your living expenses, but it might cover the cost of an annual holiday each year. It might cover your mortgage repayments. It might cover enough for you to cut back and say work 2 or 3 days per week. It is so important that we do not put all our eggs in one basket and only rely on our minds and bodies to be able to earn income. We need to stop working for money, but more so starting to get our money working for us. And I think Britney has done this incredibly successfully, so we can really take, I guess, a leaf of inspiration out of her book.
Do you have a perfume line coming out, Canna?
You know what I was thinking about on the weekend? This is totally off topic, but I was thinking, well, actually not really, it's actually very on topic. I was thinking about diversified income streams and things I'm passionate about and love. And I was like, you know what I would love to do is I would love to bring out a cashmere range. We're going into winter, starting to get cold, and I'm a really fussy consumer, but I know my cashmere fabrics and I know my classic cuts. And I was like, oh, gosh, I would love to collaborate with someone who is, an existing designer and create a classic capsule range with them. But sorry, no perfume, no. Well, look, Chris, thank you so much for coming on to Sugar Mama's Fireplay podcast. I greatly appreciate it. Just to wrap this up in a nutshell for everyone who is listening and thinks, okay, there's so much going on here. What are the 5 lessons? The 5 lessons are, number 1, make sure you have a power of attorney. Number 2, make sure that power of attorney is someone that you trust, is the right age, understands your situation and your values and what's important to you, and that you review that power of attorney to make sure they still are the right person as your situation naturally changes and evolves. Number 3 is to make sure that you have emergency money, the right amount of emergency money for you and your financial situation.
Point number 4, have a look at what insurance policies you have in place beyond general insurance. Have a look at what you've got, the structure of those policies, how much they're costing you, are they the right type of policies, and are they the right amount of cover? And when in doubt or not sure, of course, go and talk to a financial planner.
And number 5, as I just ended on, is making sure that you have other income sources, diversified income sources, and income sources that can grow and compound over time, giving you greater financial security and independence. Well, I should thank Britney as well as Chris for today's podcast.
You're very welcome. She's free. Britney is free, so she's she doesn't have to worry about. I hope that she's set up her documents now, so this can't happen to her again.
And I hope that her journey just continues to go from strength to strength. And this is, I know we're talking about Britney Spears, but I'd like everyone to stop and think for a second about mental health here, because Britney's challenge, you could say, has come down to the stress and pressure that she's been put under throughout her career for the last, 20-something years. And her mental health as a consequence has severely suffered. We are dealing with a pandemic of mental health across the world. So this is incredibly relevant and applicable to everyone today. And I speak from someone who has had challenges with mental health, where I've had to stop and take a step out and time out to focus on my recovery and my journey. And thank goodness I've had those emergency monies in place. I had insurances in place. I didn't actually need to claim them on them, fortunately, but I had that. And I have huge, huge, huge comfort and peace of mind knowing that I'm not solely reliant on my income as a financial planner. I have investments. I have growing passive income streams. I have other forms and ways of earning an income stream. So really hope that we continue to learn from Britney's experience, but also continue to see her thrive and doing what makes her happy, whether it be working or not, it doesn't matter. But we all want to see her happy and healthy again, it looks like she's on that path.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. I've really enjoyed chatting about this stuff.
All right, everyone, thank you so much for listening. Chris and I are actually thinking about doing another podcast on elders abuse, in particular financial abuse to elders. So if you're interested in hearing this, can you please make sure you leave a comment or some feedback or a rating and review so that we know that we get the green light that this is something you'd like to hear. And in the meantime, please make sure you are following me on Instagram at Sugar Mama TV. And of course, you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, Sugar Mama TV, because that is where I provide you with all the 5 to 8 minute bite-sized videos to help give you all the financial education, inspiration, and motivation. Thank everyone for listening. I'll see you next Monday on Sugar Mama's Fireplay Podcast.